The secret in the spots on monarch butterflies' wings. The wings of monarchs that survive a 2,000-mile-long migration tend to be spottier, suggesting that feature may aid the insect's ability to fly. Every fall, monarch butterflies embark on one of nature's greatest journeys. These insects flap more than 2,000 miles from their summer homes in Canada down to the mountains of central Mexico. Only about 30% survive the trip. Researchers have found a shared trait in the butterflies that make it. The edges of their wings tend to be slightly spottier. The hours Ms. Vu spent tracing the white spots in Photoshop while listening to true crime podcasts paid off in a startling discovery. The monarchs that survived the trip to Mexico tended to have more white spots, rather than the extra dark wings the researchers had predicted. Additionally, she analyzed some of the butterflies' non-migratory relatives, which also had fewer spots than the ones making the big migration. When we saw that there were more white spots, we were like, okay, so those have to have a function, said Ms. Vu, who plans to pursue graduate studies in biology. The researchers' working theory is that the spots reduce drag by creating pockets of heating and cooling on the wing edge, which could create tiny eddies of rising air. The difference is subtle. The butterflies that completed the migration were only about 3% spottier than the ones at the starting line. But the scientists suspect that even a small reduction of drag could make a tangible difference in flight capabilities. The next step for the researchers will be testing their hypothesis with wind tunnel experiments on artificial monarch wings. Ace Tenger-Trolander, a biologist at the University of Chicago who was not involved with the study, said that while a correlation between migratory success and spots is present, she is interested to see if these follow-up studies show that the spots actually help. There's a little part of me that wonders if some of these differences are due just to the way that the wing physically develops. Dr. Tenger-Trolander said. Mika Friedman, a biologist at the University of British Columbia who was also not involved with the study, agreed that follow-up studies were needed, but said, I really like the idea that this paper involves both biologists and engineers. Such a cross-disciplinary collaboration might yield not only a better understanding of monarchs' abilities to complete their migration in the face of habitat destruction and climate change, but also inspiration for more efficient aircraft. If we are right, and if the monarchs really are utilizing this simple design technique, imagine how simple it would be to just get some paint and throw it on an airplane wing. Dr. Davis said. No one even knew what these spots were for in monarchs, said Andy Davis, a biologist at the University of Georgia and an author of a study published on Wednesday in the journal PLOS One. He added, all of a sudden, it seems like they're really important. Monarch wings are mostly orange, but their edges are black, punctuated with tiny white spots. Dr. Davis was curious if those black edges contributed to monarchs' migratory capabilities. Dark colors absorb more heat, and studies of seabirds have suggested that the temperature difference between dark and light feathers can change airflow patterns, enabling birds with black-topped wings to enhance their flight efficiency, basically increasing the lift and decreasing the drag, said Mostafa Hassanalyan, a mechanical engineer at the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology. He and Dr. Davis teamed up to see if the same held true in monarchs, with darker winged butterflies having an aerodynamic advantage, making them more likely to survive the long migration than spottier peers. To test this hypothesis, Dr. Davis enlisted Tina Vu, then an undergraduate at the University of Georgia, to undertake a potentially tedious task, going through photographs of 400 monarch butterflies and measuring the amount of black and white on the edges of their wings. I had to keep giving her encouragement because it sounded so stupid at the time, Dr. Davis said. Elucidating the adaptations that promote flight in animals can aid the understanding of evolution and species divergence and/or provide inspiration for aerospace engineering and the design of better aerial vehicles. The famed long-distance migration of monarch butterflies in North America still holds many questions and opportunities for inspiration. For example, there is little research on whether the monarch's primary wing colors themselves, black, orange, or white, have any aerodynamic or migration function. Dark colors on wings of other animals have recently been shown to aid flight by enhancing solar absorption, which reduces drag forces. However, too much black surface could be problematic for monarchs, which are exposed to increasing amounts of solar energy along their flight paths. This paper describes the results of two related investigations that attempt to elucidate the importance of wing color to the monarch migration. By measuring the color proportions of nearly 400 monarch wings collected at different stages of their journey, we found, surprisingly, that successful migrants tended to have less black on their wings, about 3% less, but also more white pigment, about 3% more. Monarchs have a band of light-colored marginal wing spots. Second, image analysis of museum specimens revealed migratory monarchs had significantly larger white spots, proportional to the wing area, than most non-migratory, New World-donate butterflies, which argues spot size has evolved along with migratory behavior. Combined, these findings strongly suggest that the long-distance migration itself selects for larger white spots every fall, so that only those individuals with large spots will survive to pass on their genes. Further experimental work is needed to elucidate how the spots aid the migration, but it is possible that they enhance aerodynamic efficiency. Other work by the authors demonstrates how alternating white and black pigment on wings can reduce drag. These results will serve as a useful starting point for such endeavors, which should improve understanding of one of the world's most fascinating animal migrations and also provide practical knowledge for the field of aerospace engineering. Animals capable of flight have been shaped, sometimes quite literally, by the forces of natural selection acting on their flight structures. For terrestrial animals with long-distance migrations, like migrating birds, bats and insects, these selective forces are especially strong, because the cost of not succeeding in their migration is often death. Thus, flying migrants are uniquely adapted for undertaking long-distance flights, with many of these adaptations being investments in highly efficient and aerodynamic wing designs. Knowledge of these adaptations can help to inspire improvements to human-made aerial machines. In the insect world, such knowledge could be gained by taking a close look at the monarch butterfly, Danaus plexippus. Monarchs in North America, which weigh less than a paperclip, undertake one of the longest migrations of any insect in the world, traveling as much as 4,000 km each fall to get to their winter destinations. The vast majority of the North American population attempts to reach selected mountaintop sites in central Mexico, while a small fraction west of the Rocky Mountains takes a shorter route to winter in trees along the California coast. The journey of the eastern cohort takes at least 2 months, and this migration is fraught with uncertainty and risk, including natural and anthropogenic impacts, such that only the hardiest monarchs are successful. This migration has long fascinated scientists, even before the wintering location was known, especially given the fact that the journey is completed by individuals who have never been to the destination. Since the Mexican overwintering sites were discovered in 1975, there has been considerable entomological research into understanding how such a small animal can fly so far. Some of this work has involved examining the physiological adaptations of monarchs, including their neural function and capacity, which allows them to navigate across a continent using multiple cues. Other work has focused on their physical adaptations, such as their wing morphology. Some research has even found that the hue of their orange wing pigment is correlated with migration success and/or flight ability. This finding, that variation in pigmentation hue predicts migration success, appears to be unique within the Lepidoptera. In these cases, it is likely that the darkness of their orange color serves as a good indicator of their ability to produce pigment, which is correlated with other fitness traits, such as flying ability. Despite all the research into the factors that contribute to the migration success of monarchs and even the aforementioned studies of pigmentation, few have questioned if the primary wing colors themselves, black, orange or white, have any aerodynamic function or otherwise have an impact on the migration success. Meanwhile, a growing body of aerospace engineering literature is showing how certain wing colors can influence aerial performance of other flying animals, essentially by affecting the amount of air resistance or drag. Specifically, a darkly colored wing surface more readily absorbs solar energy, and this heats up the boundary layer of air immediately above it, more so than a light colored wing, thereby creating a pocket of warm air which the wing can pass through more readily. Warm air has less resistance. As such, dark colors on wings can substantially improve aerodynamic efficiency of flying animals because of their reduced drag. This finding can fly so far. Some of this work has involved examining the physiological adaptations of monarchs, including their neural function and capacity, which allows them to navigate across a continent using multiple cues. Other work has focused on their physical adaptations, such as their wing morphology. Some research has even found that the shade, hue, of their orange wing pigment is correlated with migration success and/or flight ability. This finding, that variation in pigmentation hue predicts migration success, appears to be unique within the Lepidoptera. In these cases, it is likely that the darkness of their orange color serves as a good indicator of their ability to produce pigment, which is correlated with other fitness traits, such as flying ability. Despite all the research into the factors that contribute to the migration success of monarchs and even the aforementioned studies of pigmentation, few have questioned if the primary wing colors themselves, black, orange or white, have any aerodynamic function or otherwise have an impact on the migration success. Meanwhile, a growing body of aerospace engineering literature is showing how certain wing colors can influence aerial performance of other flying animals, essentially by affecting the amount of air resistance or drag. Specifically, a darkly colored wing surface more readily absorbs solar energy, and this heats up the boundary layer of air.